Hello and welcome to Exchange with Mark Eddo. I'm Mark Eddo, and this is our fabulous new studio in the heart of London. On this show, you'll meet millionaires, musicians, mavericks, and decision makers. Fascinating people you'll really want to hear from. Coming up, he's coached some of the most powerful people on the planet on how to be better leaders. Now he has some great advice for you. Business guru Rene Caryal joins us on the sofa.
The perennial question I get asked, are leaders born or are leaders made? I put it to you, neither.
The master of the art of negotiation is with us, author of the Yes book, Clive Rich.
If you've only got one day to chop down a tree, you better spend 4 hours sharpening your axe.
Reimagining the American icon, the cowboy, on the streets of Philadelphia and through the lens of the up-and-coming young British photographer, Cian Smith.
They're kind of outlaws, I guess, in a sense, whereas you've kind of freed yourself through the bike in a similar way that the horses are quite freeing.
What does it take to make a great leader? And what does it take to make a great company? Rene Caryal tours the world advising and speaking on just that. From Bill Clinton to Richard Branson to the former Secretary General of the United Nations, Kofi Annan, they're all clients of Rene Caryal. He's helped some of the world's most powerful people to become more effective leaders. Rene has honed his unique philosophy as a board member for industry giants such as the UK's Marks and Spencer and Pepsi. Welcome, Rene Caryal.
My pleasure to be here, Mark.
I think that if there was a perfect guest for Exchange with Mark Eddo, it would be you. I've said this to you because, I mean, this program is all about what you can take away and what you can use immediately in your life. Now, you and I meet a lot of CEOs in the course of what we do, and leadership is a thing that you teach. First of all, let's stay with Africa. Going around Africa, have you seen a lot of good leaders?
What a great opening question, Mark, because yes, I've been around Africa. And I suppose in around 2000, I had the opportunity for the first time to work in the land of my forefathers, which I never thought I'd come.
So up to that point, you were in Europe?
I was in Europe, I was in America, I'd done all that sort of stuff. But Barclays Africa approached me, and we had the challenge and a half. At the time, they were in 11 different countries across Africa. Every managing director of every one of those countries was a British expat. And they've realised that that wasn't not going to fuel growth. Future growth would come from better understanding the customers they served. And what they realised is they needed an indigenous MD for each of their countries. So off we went in search of the Holy Grail, the African banking leader. We searched high and low. We found technocrats. Talent is no longer the issue in Africa. Very bright,
People
very smart
who
technocrats.
understand the processes.
More than understood it. Really good, high caliber. No leaders. We filled every position. None of them came from banking. We had to look in other industries, other sectors. We took them from telecoms, we took them from insurance, but we went for leaders. Now, what's interesting about bringing a leader in, we didn't need a technical expert. We had enough of those. So you had a leader who was surrounded by the technocrats, and they worked brilliantly. But it was tough.
Why?
No, there's no university course on leadership. There's no MBA on leadership. We'll teach management. Remember, management is IQ. Leadership is EQ. Management is the tasks, the activities, the balance scorecard, the KPIs, all the things you can measure. But management itself hasn't changed since 1899. And management is always set up in the first place to ensure our people are doing the things we want them to do. Management is policing. Management is auditing. Management is checking. To be managed every day is not a bag of laughs. Have you done it? Let me see it. Where's the deadline? That's what managers have to do. But if you don't manage, you'll go out of business tomorrow. So this isn't an argument against management. In times of volatility and transformation, management alone won't get us there. We need that touch of leadership. And if leadership, for me, it's EQ, it's an emotional thing. It's vision, people, teams, culture. Vision, people, teams, culture.
You talk a lot about culture. What comes to mind when you say that is that it's not about strategy, it's about narrative, it's about creating a culture of stories, I guess, to a great degree.
I suppose if the definition of culture is the way we get things done around here, it's unique to your organisation. Anyone can copy your strategy, Nobody can copy your culture. Why do not more firms fuel and oxygenate their culture by design? The likes of Google, they fuel it, they shape it, they know exactly what they're trying to create there. Most others just let it happen. And you know, you always hear people saying, oh, it's a little bit too political for me. When things are going well, we call it culture. When things are going badly, we call it politics. They're one and the same thing. It's the way we get things done around here, unique to the organisation. Now, very smart chief executives, the very smart leaders know that their biggest asset is their people, and what envelops their people and how they move it is what we call culture. And it's best fueled by stories, but it's about values as well. It's attitudes, it's behaviours, it's our belief system. And there are some organisations who, Procter & Gamble, Unilever, PepsiCo, you can nearly touch their culture, they're so vibrant. Google, you're part of something special. But far too many organisations, you're just an employee who comes into work and your work is measured and you're managed.
Now, you worked for many years in Europe and America. You were on the board of Pepsi. You know, Pepsi wakes up every morning and faces the biggest brand in the world, Coca-Cola. That must have been an interesting ride. You're transferring a lot of your attention to Africa now. You're working a lot in Africa. You're going there almost every week. What are you teaching people? What are you teaching CEOs? What are you telling them?
So this is a great question, Mark, because there was a time when Africa's big challenge was we just didn't have the critical mass of talent. That's no longer the case today. Very, very smart people, very able people. But
and ambitious.
Beyond ambitious. I mean, it's vibrant. You go to the big cities, you go to Nairobi, Lagos, Johannesburg, you can feel the adrenaline.
You can really feel it.
But there's a distinct lack of leadership. There are good managers. There are many experts, but those who can give the organisation a vision, something to believe in, something to belong to enable the organisation to punch above its weight, to attract and retain the best talent around, to give people a purpose. And you know, and I suppose what sums up for me is good leaders create followers, great leaders create leaders. We don't see enough that we're still on the followership. We haven't got to. So if you look at a Google, you look at a Goldman Sachs, they're what we call academy businesses. People in the leaders create more leaders, that's why they win. And the simple equation is the organisation with the most leaders wins. So why wouldn't you? But leadership isn't about rank or status or hierarchy. It's not job title. Management is, because we can measure it, we can touch it, that's where you get promoted on. Leadership is an attitude. Once someone decides to become a leader, no one can take it from them. So why wouldn't you create more leaders? And if I asked you, who's the best worker in your team, that person in your team that when it's all going wrong, you've got mission critical, you need to get it done, you'll give it to that person.
Yes.
That person's a leader. Now, the perennial question I get asked, are leaders born or are leaders made? I put it to you, neither. Leaders are found.
Leaders are found.
And we should go, every organisation go looking for the leaders. They're those people who make it happen. Those people we trust. Those people who, they're dynamic, they get things done. They may not be called leader. And if you want the model of leadership, which I think is absolutely the new age leader of today, think mothers at home. They've never been to university, they've never been taught, yet they know every single one of their charges needs something slightly unique and different for them. They know when to coax, when to coach, when to provoke, when to communicate. They know soft touch, hard touch. They set boundaries. They are the active role models.
So your mama is the leadership
He's the
role
most
model.
brilliant leader of today. In transformational times, I think women do the leadership piece a little bit better than men. And I think we're living in the age of women. This is the magic moment for women, that more emotionally connected, that engaged, that caring, that support, not just challenge. These are the times we're living in. Everyone can be a leader if they choose to be. It's not about rank. So why haven't we got more?
Is there a question that you could answer for aspiring leaders? What do they need to know? There's many of them watching out there.
I would say that start with your leadership code. Step number one is leadership. Leadership best happens with diversity and inclusion.
Diversity and inclusion.
So therefore, in my team, I know the 2 or 3 things I'm really good at. We call them spikes. The thing you're not good at, you're great at. And I know the 154 things I'm absolutely useless at.
Which we often focus too much on.
We get obsessed with in Western developed societies. They were your weaknesses, they were areas for development, they were areas for improvement. Today we call them limitations. I put it to you, if the leader is human enough, humble enough to understand what they're not so good at, and they know the 2 or 3 things they're brilliant at, then here's the key for leadership. Surround yourself with people that balance out the things you're not so good at. Simple. Football teams have been doing it for donkey's years. The left back doesn't play right back for a reason. The last thing that a leader needs is 10 copies of themselves. We need people who see things differently, think things differently, and behave differently. And there was a time when the leader could be so broad they could answer every single question. That doesn't happen today. The world's too fast-moving, markets are too unforgiving. It's no longer feasible for the leadership to be that broad, but it's totally feasible for the team to be that broad. But the trick is everyone plays to their spikes. Everyone plays to what they're brilliant at. That's the symphony, that's the orchestra, that's the music. And football teams have been doing it for years.
And that's the philosophy. And that philosophy is in your new book that's out soon called Spike. Rene, Caryal, a joy to have you here. Thank you.
Fabulous. My pleasure, sir.
In business, it's not enough to be good at what you do or have a long list of qualifications or know the right people. If you want to get ahead, you need to know how to negotiate, how to get the best deal, how to get a yes. Now, Clive Rich is a top lawyer and international deal maker and the author of the Yes book, The Art of Better Negotiation, and he's here with us today. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Now, you've done a lot of deals, haven't you? You've worked with Sony, Simon Cowell, not an easy client, I can imagine, a number of deals around the world. Why is negotiation so important?
Well, I think we all spend most of our waking hours doing some kind of negotiation or something akin to negotiation. Maybe it's influencing, maybe it's persuading, maybe it's getting our kids to do something. So negotiation is a very important aspect of what we do, but people don't really think about how they do it. So I find that people negotiate on autopilot. They're not really conscious of what they're doing, and consequently when it goes well they don't know why it went well, and when it goes badly they don't know why it went badly either. So they don't really learn or improve as negotiators.
But all negotiations are not the same. I mean, there must be many ways to negotiate. So how could you have a philosophy, which you do have, that you could apply to every negotiation?
I have a model, and you can think of it as a toolkit. So there's lots of different tools in there. I don't tell you which tool to use for which particular job, but it's important you know that the tools are there and what they all do, and then you assemble the right toolkit for the deal that you're involved in.
So tell us about it. What is the philosophy? I'm in a deal, I'm in the room, I need to apply it. Talk us through, what do I do?
Well, one of the things that people miss a lot is that negotiations always proceed in stages. So all negotiations have 7 stages, whether the participants are aware of it or not. And all negotiations have to go through those stages. And normally people either skip a stage or they're at different stages at the same time. And then you just get one stage, which is the chaos stage. So if it feels chaotic in the negotiation, that's probably because people are at different stages at the same time.
So tell me about these 7 stages, walk us through it.
Yeah, so quite often people start at the end of the process with the bargaining. So people love a good haggle, don't they?
Yeah, and that's what they have. That's what negotiation means to me.
That's right.
It's about bargaining and getting the best.
That's right.
And nothing more. So you start where?
So I start with preparation, which is not very fashionable, but I think that time invested at the beginning of the process, thinking about what you're doing, thinking about the other side, thinking about the bargaining power on both sides, is really time invested. So Abraham Lincoln had a folksy quote, which was, if you've only got one day to chop down a tree, you better spend 4 hours sharpening your axe. And I think that's applied very nicely to negotiation.
And then?
So preparation, climate setting the rules of engagement, the atmospherics, who's going to be there, what's the agenda, how much time have we got, how much authority has everyone got.
And then, go on.
And then, so preparation, climate setting, and then really exploring the needs on both sides. So most of us set out on a negotiation with a broadcast mindset. I'm going to keep telling you what I want until you give it to me. But actually I find the more you focus on the other side, the more you get. So
this is like the 48 laws of power appeal to their self-interest, is what you're saying?
Yeah, you've just got to work out what makes them tick, what motivates them, what do they need. And then I'm not saying you do that in a sort of tree-hugging sense. Obviously, you want what you want from the deal as well. But if you focus on what the other side needs, you're more likely to get more of what you need in return.
What I find is when I'm in a deal-making scenario, emotions sometimes take over, because you want this thing so much that it's very hard to be cold and cool about it. And I bet a lot of people find themselves where their emotions take over.
What I would say is that it's really important to tailor your behaviour to the situation and the person in front of you. And if you're a psychologist, you'll have examined all sorts of different categories and classifications of human behaviour. I work with a model that has 24 choices of behaviour as a negotiator, and I try and pick and choose which I want for a particular occasion.
Give me an example.
So sometimes it's very important to work from I, in which case, stating expectations, using incentives and pressures, stating proposals with reasons, all of which sound quite cold. That's quite important. Sometimes I work from the U, which is all about listening, exploring, finding common ground, disclosing feelings so that we feel we're in it together. So all of those behaviours might be much more touchy-feely, might be much more emotional, and that might be a very good thing given the stage we're at or the kind of person you are. So it's about choosing horses for courses.
And you've got, what, 30 years of experience in this, right? It'd be hard-pressed to get anyone better at doing deals on this couch than you. In all that time and in the current day, who do you like? Who are really, point out some really good negotiators, some good deal makers?
Well,
Donald Trump.
Well, people would probably not be top of the list.
You don't think? I mean, he has a book as well, doesn't he? The Art of the Deal.
Yeah, well, that's maybe his opinion.
You don't think he's a good negotiator?
Well, I think that most people are good at some aspects of negotiation, but they have some gaps.
Yes.
So I don't know Donald Trump very well, but I would suspect that he might be quite strong in the bargaining phase, quite good at telling you what he wants and pressing for that, but some of the other stages we've talked about, preparation, don't see much sign of that. Suspect he probably does it all on the hoof. Climate setting, not really his kind of thing. Exploring needs on other sides, definitely not. Choosing different behaviours on different occasions, absolutely not. So I think it's a question of having the whole repertoire at your disposal. That's what makes the successful negotiators, rather than just focusing on one strength and overdoing it.
You wear many hats, and one of them is actually you've constructed a platform, I guess, to make it more accessible for people to have legal advice, especially small and medium-sized businesses. I think it's really cool. Tell us about it. It's called Law Bites. Yeah,
so Law Bite is an online legal service. It takes small companies from idea to ideal as they start, grow and succeed. So we do everything from start-up to exit, and we try and provide law affordably, fast and simply.
And that's because you pool lawyers together virtually, I guess. Am I saying?
That's exactly right. So we don't have any of the clutter of a normal law firm, no big swanky offices, no big partnership structure. The online channel is the principal means of engagement, and around that we've wrapped a virtual law firm of very experienced expert lawyers, and because of that we're able to deliver the service much quicker and more affordably than usual. And the website is www.lawbite.co.uk. That's easy to remember. Now finally, let's go full circle. Okay, we're talking about deal making, the art of negotiation. Give our viewers the 3 tips, if you were to give them the elevator 3 tips test of what they should do in 30 seconds. Okay, well, use a model. Use my model, but if you don't like my model, use somebody's model. Don't just wing it as a negotiator. Vary your behaviour. Don't behave the same way with everybody all the time. And don't talk so much. We all tend to spend a lot of time speaking in negotiation. You have 2 of these, 1 of these. Spending twice as much time listening as talking is a very good maxim for any negotiator. Fantastic, fantastic advice. Thank you very much. Clive Rich, author of the Yes book. My pleasure.
Here on Exchange with Mark Eddo, we make you a promise. If we see something interesting, we'll show it to you. So come over here. I want to show you something cool. I love photography, and I was reading in the Financial Times magazine a story about horse breeders in the dilapidated streets of Philadelphia. They are the work of the British photographer Cian Smith. You're here with us now. Thank you for coming in with these great images. My first question to you is, what made you get on a plane with your camera and go all the way to Philadelphia to shoot these guys?
I was on Instagram and looking around at different photographers, and I came across one who lived in Philly and worked there. And one of the images he had was of a man with a horse, and I found it really unusual because you don't normally associate African Americans with horses.
Yeah.
So I did a little bit more research, and I came across the Fletcher Street stable.
Let's see some others.
Were taken. And I was just fascinated. There was a real lineage which had been around for centuries within America of black people and horses.
Black jockeys.
Yeah, black jockeys. The first Kentucky Derby had, I think it was 12 out of the 15 riders were African Americans. And from then onwards, there's been lots of winners up until a point where they decided to revoke licenses for African Americans, and they weren't able to compete anymore. And then recently there's been sort of maybe more of a resurgence.
And I guess that was slavery once because I was reading that article and it said the horse and the slave were bonded, in bondage. I thought that was quite powerful.
Yeah.
So after that they got their license revoked when slavery was abolished, and then it all but died out. But it still survives on the streets of Philadelphia. I mean, that's one of the streets there. And these are some of the most run-down streets in America. You pointed out to me before we came on that you actually went there in November during the election, no less. So just during the time that Trump and Hillary Clinton were in town. So when you were talking to these guys, and we can see another one in the next shot, when you were talking to guys like this, I mean, what was the relationship with the horse? What did this stuff mean to them? Because for some of them, I guess, it was all they had. Yeah,
well, for a lot of them, it's a generational thing where the father will pass on the knowledge of keeping horses, and they'll have been around horses since a very young age. For others, they found kind of a sanctuary within that place. It's obviously quite a rough neighborhood, as you can see it from the photos. So for some, that specific block is kind of a safe haven, and a lot of people go there and spend time with each other. And also, I know in African American communities, there's a big problem with a lack of father figures, and I think being around a positive male role model is really a good thing for a young person in America.
And the horses, these are not the best Arabian stallions. Some of them, in a way, match some of the lives of the people there, because they would have been headed for the knacker's yard for dog food, if not for this, right?
Yeah, for quite a few of them. I mean, most of the horses are purchased from a horse auction, and they'll go out and they'll bid on the horses. So a lot of them are horses which would be headed for the meat factory if they weren't purchased there. So there's sort of a duality between the horseman and the horse, where they build a relationship and they kind of help to nurture each other.
And now, it seems your eye, right? Because you've got lots of things that you could point your lens at. Right? You're a young photographer. You're producing work like this, but there seems to be something of a theme in what you decide to spend your time on, because you did something called Bike Life, right? Which I think we've got some images of that. That's closer to home. You live in London. This is somewhere in London. Where is this?
This was near Enfield, I think it was. Just on the outskirts.
And they're not riding horses. They're riding dirt bikes in the middle of, and this is a community of young guys.
They're kind of outlaws, I guess, in a sense, whereas you've kind of freed yourself through the bike in a similar way that the horses are quite freeing. And that's one of the things a lot of horsemen would say, is that riding the horse frees them from their own problems. And it's the same thing with these bikes. They had a very similar attitude, where they would go and ride and they would be able to forget all of their troubles. There's also obviously clearly an exceptional amount of skill to be had being able to do something like that.
Why did you become a photographer? I mean, you could have chosen a lot of things. I mean,
that's true.
You seem very clear on your life's path at such a young age. I envy you, because a lot of viewers would say, I wish I could figure out what I was good at and what my passion is. But how did you figure that out?
I used to do a lot of music. I played the saxophone and the clarinet for about 10 years and used to go to music college every week. So
you're always creative?
I've been into having a creative outlet. I did art GCSE and through that I learned about photography. And then I went to do an A-level and I had a really amazing A-level tutor who kind of nurtured my talent and pushed me to do that. And from then on I've kind of known it's something I want to do. I think it's a good reason to be able to observe communities or engage with people that you wouldn't normally be able to have the dialogue with. So having photography is just a great excuse to be able to do that.
Well, your stuff caught my eye, it caught the Financial Times eye. I'm sure you're going to be a big success. Cian Smith, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.